Now we go to our first presentation this evening, and our presentation is on IOC safeguarding by Susan Adhiambo, who is NOCK lead on safeguarding matters. Welcome, Susan.
So thank you very much for joining. I'm going to just take you through briefly on what the priorities of IOC are in terms of safeguarding. So in building a safe physical and digital spaces in sport. I think Elena already introduced me. I'm leading safeguarding at National Olympic Committee of Kenya. So we may ask ourselves probably why we are here. And as we have seen in the video that we had in the beginning, abuse and abuse is moving to digital, and therefore digital abuse is very real, and especially sexual and gender-based violence generally. And then we actually come to sport. So in sport as well, it's very real. So first of all, safeguarding is already a risk, but then the digital spaces are actually increasing those risks. And so we have, as sports organizations, then we actually have to conform to what is happening and adjust to also safeguard our athletes and people working in sports in this area. So we are here so that we can see how we can do this, and what the IOC is doing as a leader in sport, and what we can borrow from what they're doing. So first of all, safe sports is a priority of the IOC in the 2024 to 2028 plan. In the IOC Gender Equality and Inclusion Framework, there are 5 focus areas, and safe sport is actually one of them, as we can see here. And the IOC is looking at it as an organization, as the owner of the Olympic Games. So a lot of safeguarding going on in the Olympic Games, and then as IOC as the leader of the Olympic movement, and us as NOC and the sports organizations that are under the umbrella of NOC, then we are following suit. And then lastly is as Olympism in society. I think we have all come across these issues that are in sports. They are not unique, but they are also they are cross-cutting across the society, and that now builds the base for us talking about this topic of safe sports. And so what is the IOC's safeguarding vision? Number one, it's the IOC is athlete-centered. They pride themselves in being an athlete-centered, and as an NOC, we follow suit. So we are athlete-centered and taking a rights-based approach. The other vision is a basic safety and dignity for every athlete. I think we all know this is also a human right, and so we have to also preserve it in sports. The other thing is taking an individual as first a human being, so prioritizing well-being in front of performance. And finally, the one thing that we stress a lot is that safeguarding is a shared responsibility. So the IOC framework is based on 3 things. First of all, it's prevention. The second one is reporting, and the third one is response. So in prevention, we're talking about, we are going to see more later, but we're talking about things like education, like codes, code of conduct, like policy statements, like how do we do recruitment. The second one is reporting. How do we report? How do we safeguard those who report? And the last one is response, and just taking a survivor-centered policies. So of these three pillars, prevention is the most effective, but it requires policies, it requires education, so that then we don't have to cross over to the number 2 and 3. So when we delve a bit deeper on safeguarding, today we have offline abuse, we have sexual, we have emotional, we have physical abuse. And then especially in sport, this happens a lot. There's bullying, there's hazing, and thirdly, there is abuse of power. I think it cross-cuts in the society, but in sports as well. It's one of the most misused, or rather the abuse that is one of the most rampant. Then, so the thing is, these offline abuses are now crossing to online. So now we are seeing a lot of cyber harassment. We are seeing grooming. We are seeing image-based abuse. We are seeing stalking, and we are seeing hacking. So we'll see an example of grooming later. But if you can see these online abuses, they're generally the abuses that appear offline, but then they are taken online, and it's easier. It's easier online. Someone can be anonymous, especially there's just too much freedom in the social spaces. So why does digital safeguarding then matter? So it's not only athletes that communicate daily on socials, it's all of us. So there is a lot of online communication. We are live streaming increases exposure. Because of the online spaces, then there is increased exposure of abuse. We know that it's very public, it's very open, the communication in the social spaces, from links, live streaming, from DMs, and so, therefore there is a lot of digital risk. And now it has led us to now know that digital environments should be part of the sports safeguarding mandates that we take. So the IOC gives guidance on how to go about these kind of abuses. So we have some of the guidances that the digital safeguarding guidances at the moment. We have safe communication rules, no private adult minor chats, use official teen channels, education on digital consent, protecting the images of athletes. And now, if also any of you has come across National Olympic Committee, these are the things that we are taking into account very seriously for the athletes. Then they have to give us access first to their images. They have to give us consent. We have to tell them how we are going to use it. And then it's our role to actually protect these images. It also goes to how we take the photos, how we post them, just to safeguard those areas. And lastly is training coaches, and not only coaches, but athlete support personnel on digital boundaries in safeguarding. And so now we are just going to see, I think we said in the beginning that the digital abuse is real. And I'll show you an example of a study by IOC, not actually a study. It's service that the IOC implemented in Paris 2024 using AI. I think now most of us, we are using AI, and we can actually take advantage of what is available so that we can protect the athletes and people working in sport. So in Paris 2024, the IOC actually ran a program using AI to prevent abuse in the cyberspaces. And they were tracking the posts of about 2.4 million athletes and officials. So the survey, the tool was scanning and 152,000 posts were flagged as potentially abusive by AI. Of this, there were 10,200 posts verified as abusive. And what the tool could do is that it could block and remove it so that then it does not reach to the athlete or the support personnel. So the athletes were able to be protected from just a lot of abuse that was going on. Coming close to Kenya, I think if you followed the Olympics, then some people start saying, oh, okay, when are we winning medals? You're not doing anything. You went there to joyride. And so those are the general things. But then some of these things actually go into now becoming abusive. And it's not only for women, it's for both women and men. So this is just an example of how we can use AI and tools, and just to show that actually online abuse is real. When we come to, I think you remember we talked about prevention, then response. So in prevention, code of conduct is one of the things that can assist us in preventing abuse and harassment. So for offline, we can do contact guidelines. We can do travel and accommodation protocols that are safe. And when in online spaces, and this especially for some of us working with young children, is limiting messaging, keeping communication history. If it's an athlete, keeping the communication history with the support personnel, limiting private chats, and just putting rules for posting. And this is for both the organization and for both the athletes. So like in our codes of conduct for our games, we actually have some rules for the athletes and then for the organization in just how we use these images. I'll give you an example of a safeguarding breach. And I think this is also to just help us, especially those who are not very, very much aware of something that you probably might see, or it has happened, or it happens, and then we have not thought that this is actually a breach. This is an example. It's an anonymous case. We have a teen athlete receiving late night messages from an athlete support personnel, could be a coach, a manager, a physio, a doctor, whoever. And this escalates over time. And this coach has the power in selection. The teen athlete feels like they need to continue speaking to the coach or whoever. So in this case, there are no digital rules. So if this is an athlete in our custody, this is a coach in our sport organization, then we need to have digital rules. No late night messaging, for instance, then this can safeguard the teen. Because then if there are no digital rules, they can go unnoticed, but also we can bridge. So these are the small things that we can look at in terms of safeguarding. Then we go again, we are still on prevention, and this everything we are doing is now based on the guidelines that through the IOC digital guidelines. So are we probably vetting? Are we vetting those who are coming into contact with sports? Are we doing reference checks? Are we checking their social media behavior review? And I think it is mandatory to do a training prior to people who come across athletes prior to them getting access to the athletes, so that we make sure that they actually know about these things. When we go to now reporting, these are some guidelines that we can use, because when we report, then we should make sure that someone who's reporting is feeling safe, Then we need to actually have, they need to have access to multiple channels. So you can either speak to someone, you can fill an online form, you can send an anonymous message, something that also maintains their confidentiality. And then one thing that we have to ensure is that we strictly prohibit retaliation in case of report. Currently, what is the NOCK doing? We are aligning our safeguarding framework to the IOC. There is considerable resources and help on this. We are training safeguarding officers. We did one training in 2023, and between 2026 and 2028, we'll continue doing this. So we have the national safeguarding, and then we have the IOC safeguarding officers. We are doing athletes education, any athlete that comes into contact with NOCK. And the other thing is collaboration with ministries and other partners. There are many partners who are doing one or the other thing on safeguarding, on safe sports, on SGBV. So collaborations are very important because we cannot all do everything. Then when it comes to responding to abuse, this is something as an organization, you need to have your flowchart of how you respond. So this is an example. You receive a report. You ensure, first of all, remember we are making it athlete-centered. You ensure safety of the person reporting. You document, and also we have to make sure that the documentation is kept safely, properly, and it's confidential. You triage just as you go to hospital, and now you have to go through all those spaces to actually come to the root of what is the issue. And then you make sure that you refer them to a support. The investigation is done. And one of the things to know is that we have to reassure the survivor, the victim, that the investigation will be timely. You can imagine someone reporting now, and then we are actually following it up in a year. So have we actually supported the survivor? So it needs to be very timely and should be taken as seriously. So in digital safeguarding, probably what's next, you might be here and wondering, we have to align the safeguarding guidelines to also include digital. For NOC, for instance, is to ensure that federation training in our continuing education series. We need to create safe social media policies. I think media is also another topic that we can consider all on its own. And most importantly, parent and athlete digital consent training, so that they know how we are using their images, the storage, and that kind of thing. So if we have national federations here, you might be wondering, okay, what can we do now? We asked in the poll questions if we have safeguarding officers. Those are some of the things that we'll be looking at, so that we know where we need support. We need to update our codes to digital space, and this is not only federations, is almost all of us. Even if you're here and you're not a sports federation, then this actually cuts across. We need to train those who are coming into contact with our athletes, create reporting systems where there are none. And then the most important thing, I don't know if you've seen a lot of lawsuits now on data, protecting athletes' data and images. And finally, and very, very important, is building a self-reporting culture, because people don't report because they are afraid of retaliation, of just what might come out of it. So thank you. I'll end it there for now. Thanks, Elena.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that wonderful presentation. Now we join Diana Watila, the legal mind. She's been engaged in so many organizations where they deal with governance, safeguarding, human rights, advocacy, legal policies, and all that. So she's, I think, when we are discussing with her, she's so passionate about this topic of safeguarding, and she'll be able to take us through a topic that actually is what we are discussing right now. We are conversing about it now, about cyber security in safeguarding. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you very much, and I'm honored to be doing the presentation today. We're going to discuss the issue of technological assisted gender-based violence, which is the theme of this year's 16 days of activism. And for today, we'll look at introduction to what is this cybercrime, technological assisted facilitated GBV. We'll look at the global scope and its prevalence, behaviors, motivation, and intent. We'll look at the laws, and we will also look at the victim, survivor, impact, and coping, and make key recommendations, and now give the summary. Please feel free to engage on the chat as we start. So what is technological assisted gender-based violence? You'll find that it has the same definition as gender-based violence. And this is violence against another person based on their sexual or gender identities, and it perpetuates harmful gender norms. These days, it's not only offline, but it can even follow you to your own bedroom, and it's perpetrated using internet and mobile technology. This includes stalking, bullying, sexual harassment, defamation, hate speech, and we call it sextortion, exploitation. Women, girls, and LGBTI individuals are disproportionately affected. I'll give you one example that I saw just last week. I was in one group and someone circulated a video. And after seeing the video, I was shocked because it was a video of a gang rape that occurred in Meru. That gang rape video is now circulating everywhere. And I can just only imagine how the survivor will feel that at her lowest moment, she was violated. And so we see that technological gender-based violence is an act of violence perpetrated by one or more individuals that is committed, assisted, aggravated, or amplified by the use of information, communication technologies, or digital media on the basis of gender. So back to the story I was telling you about. A lady, she's being gang raped. They have physically, sexually violated her, but they've videoed it, which I believe they wanted to share among each other, but somehow it got out. 3 people have already been arrested, and we will continue observing that case. So how does it look like when it is in sports? There's cyberbullying, harassment, and digital stalking in sports. For example, the example given that during the Paris Olympics, our medal came late, and therefore people started harassing the athletes, the coaches. Or when you find a referee, during CHAN, a referee made a call that led us to being eliminated. You find maybe journalists are also attacked, maybe for making their opinion. I was watching a sports show, and one of the journalists is under attack by Egyptians because he spoke badly about Mo Salah. So you find that a lot of people within the sports environment face targeted cyberbullying and harassment for fans, teammates, officials, and sports institutions. You find there's digital stalking. That's where someone will be always monitoring an athlete's online activity. In fact, some of the athletes may be harassed by the administrators because maybe they have a TikTok profile, which maybe they dance, and that would be construed as something wrong. So you'd find that's how many people face online violence. People can actually make threats linked to match performance. The most famous one was in the last time the World Cup was in USA. And I think it's someone from Colombia who scored a own goal. And when he went home, he was shot dead. That was physical. But many people can make online threats of death. There's the issue of reputational smearing, where they'll say that the athlete is maybe promiscuous or just spoil their reputation that they got into the team through sleeping around. The famous one is impersonation accounts, where people will pretend to be you and maybe look for money. Some people, their social media has been hacked and embarrassing material is kept. Issues of leaked training schedules, where it will make the fans know where you are and interrupt the training, or compromise connected devices in training facilities. Decisions. During our different investigations, we'll find that someone who has been accused will now start a blog and start giving propaganda about what has happened and try to allude to their innocence. Some of them may also directly contact the investigator or through a family member. I've had that experience where someone wrote to a close family member and made a threat regarding an investigation I had done. And I had to tell that person that there's a conflict of interest so that we cannot have any discussion. We also have the famous troll networks, and I've seen many in Kenya. They will just troll you. Everything you do, anything you write, people will be trolling, insulting you. They'll be launching mass attacks, including body shaming. Some people are quite ageist. They'll say this person is old. What are they doing? There'll be sexist slurs and intimidation. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who face this are women, and it normally pushes women out of leadership and also competitive roles. So women athletes and girls participating in sports programs are increasingly targeted through social media, live stream platforms, and messaging apps by individuals posing as scouts, agents, or sponsors. So someone might now start saying that they need to take naked photos of you because they want to see your fitness, or they're looking for you sponsorship. So you find that these people are predators and they will misuse athlete-fan interactions. They will give you fake endorsement opportunities and manipulated images to groom or coerce victims. Now, with that, we continue to face a major challenge where survivors are reporting significant barriers to justice. The first one that we've seen that is very common even in Kenya is an institutional cover-up, where you'd find maybe the federation will rally behind the accused and seek to intimidate anyone who seeks to investigate, and also target the athlete in question. There are weak safeguarding frameworks in sports federations. There's a very big reluctance of officials to act against coaches or team managers, and there's stigma that discourages athletes from reporting abuse or for fearing selection opportunities or scholarships. When we are doing our investigations, we faced very many athletes who refuse to talk to us or talk to us on, they have to make sure that it is private, anonymous, because they fear they will be identified. Now, as a result of that, there is now the psychological violence. and technological facilitated economic abuse in sports. Now, whenever you're bullied, the online shaming after match performance, threats from fans, and public humiliation orchestrated by rival teams or disgruntled officials can cause really a lot of psychological harm. And you find that female athletes experience technologically facilitated economic abuse when managers or partners control access to their digital banking platforms, manipulate digital contracts, or withhold online earnings from sponsorship and content creation. This is a major issue that we are facing specifically in athletics, where your partner becomes your manager and you transfer everything to them to manage as your training. And then when you want to access your investment, you find everything is in the man's name. So the only thing that we would want to advise you is that if you are going to transfer your money or your property to anyone and they're taking care of it on your behalf, please have a written agreement showing that you're not transferring that as a gift, but for them to manage on your behalf. Then we're looking at online violence against women in sports leadership and governance. We find that women who are sports administrators, referees, or people facing candidates for leadership position may face cyber harassment, impersonation, and doxing intended to undermine their credibility. Now, if you're a woman and you're a mother, maybe your husband can survive, but you would not want your children to see what the information against you. So you'll find that you would rather quit than face the shame. There's also coordinated digital information campaigns, and it's sometimes fueled by rival functions within the federation. They'll circulate fabricated scandals or personal accounts, and this affects both female and male candidates from contesting or holding leadership roles. During my year with Gender Protection Implementation Committee, you'll find a very serious person in sports and you ask them, why can't you vie? Why can't you make a difference? But they'll say, it is too toxic. I do not want to get involved. And then now you're looking at especially Facebook, TikTok, the algorithms. So if someone starts a scandal about you, the algorithm will push it to all maybe the sports users you are following. So it keeps on being pushed and being amplified. And that ends up
talking. So no, we're talking. So I'd like you to be softer. I'd like you to make more friends because you see.
Hello? Sorry, there's someone who interrupted, but we'll continue.
Yeah, just proceed then.
Yeah. So globally, online algorithms can amplify these misogynistic narratives. It creates a hostile environment, and it will discourage women from participating in sports governance and decision making. Now you find that it's not only a national issue, but it affects roughly 33% of respondents in Kenya and South Africa, and up to 40% of adults in states. It includes doxing. Doxing is where you take someone's personal information and put it in the media, and it's become something very common in Kenya, where someone will put someone's number and tell people to salimia. That is actually a form of technological assisted gender-based violence and a violation of the Data Privacy Act. We've talked about stalking, bullying, and sexual harassment. We've said women and girls and individuals are most affected. It causes emotional distress, loss of status, decreased productivity, and even suicide. But now we are finding that, as was raised in the prior presentation, we do not have the capacity to address technologically facilitated GBV. Someone can be hiding behind the screen in America and you're in Kenya. Then you're also finding the terminology and definitions are inconsistent. You'll find we'll call it cybercrime. Another thing, it'll have different names. So it's very hard to understand that we are talking about the same thing. So it makes it difficult even to do a research to find out the prevalence of online sexual violence. Now, how does it affect the perpetrator, victim, and survivor? You will find that the main motivation for this violence is either revenge, jealousy, it can have a political agenda, anger, it could have an ideological agenda, sexual desire, it could be monetary need or desire, and also someone who wishes to maintain a social status. What is the intent? Someone may intend to make you suffer psychological harm, cause physical harm. Someone would want to push a person to suicide or harming themselves. It could be social, economic, or functional. Now, the perpetrator could have a personal relationship, someone you know. It could be impersonal or it could be institutional. And we've seen that the behaviors that they will show us would be stalking, defamation, bullying, sexual harassment, exploitation, and hate speech. And they'll use cross-cutting tactics, social networking sites, dating sites, communication text, entertainment sites, or personal online accounts. When we talk about dating sites, there's something called catfishing, where someone will now engage you on a dating site, but they are using a different identity. And you'll find that there are very many different offenses. There are different ways they can attack you. And the best way you can survive is either reporting, seeking support services, social support, changing technological use, or avoidance. Online violence against women in sports, we're looking at the digital threat. Women in sports face coordinated online harassment, doxing, gender disinformation, image-based abuse. We've talked about the social media algorithm sensationalize and make sexist comments, and this digital abuse spills offline, affecting games, training, and personal safety. We are seeing that federations often fail to enforce code of conducts, tolerate abuse, or are complicit in smear campaigns. And internal federation politics sometimes demand sexual favors or exclude women candidates via coordinated online attacks. And complaints are rarely investigated, reinforcing a culture of impunity and undermining democratic participation. And I can give you a few examples. An ex-partner can post an intimate video after a breakup and results in blackmail. The victim pays to stop harassment or goes back to the ex-partner. LGBTI individuals are targeted by fake online accounts, vigilante attack, and physical harm. You might find a feminist sports journalist posts a blog, receives slander and threats. They end up shutting down accounts and they quit their jobs. There are several existing laws in Kenya, and this includes the Sexual Offences Act, Counter Trafficking in Persons Act, Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, and the Children's Act. And these laws provide some protection, but face barriers, including fragmented enforcement, limited digital capacity, for corruption, and slow judicial processes. Internationally, Kenya has also ratified international instruments such as the Maputo Palermo protocols and is in the process of acceding to Malabo conventions. So other laws are the Penal Code. I've talked about the Sexual Offences Act, and one of it is criminalizing displaying obscene images, words, or sounds to a child with harmful intent. So it protects our children in sports. We have the Data Protection Act. It protects privacy of personal information. So where you decide to dox an athlete, a person in sports, and put their personal information online, that is an offense. And it can also be applied to address harmful image-based misuse, where I heard of a case where once a person in sports sent a video to a lady he believed was interested in him, of him masturbating. And the lady subsequently forwarded it to everyone within their circle. And he faced a lot of harassment, and it really, really psychologically affected the person. We've talked about the Children's Act, and there's Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, and it prohibits producing or possessing harmful child-related material, and it applies to cases to like live stream abuse and misuse of images. So federations, as you're doing your live stream, please be aware that if you share intimate images of someone, even if it happened during a live stream, they can be an issue for you. We have the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act. And why do you think this is important? We've had cases where children are moved from one county to another to play sports in another county, and they go to school. And sometimes these children face gender-based violence. So that is why the act is relied upon. There are very heavy penalties. You can face up to 20 million, a fine of up to 20 million or 10 years imprisonment. For wrongful distribution of intimate images, it's up to 200,000 or 2 years imprisonment. And then one of the key things that I will repeat is that if you have data, you can only use it for the lawful, fair, transparent processing, data minimization, accuracy, and limited possession. Meaning, for example, if you have a medical test of the athlete, you can only use it for why you requested it. You cannot transmit it elsewhere. And also, all the data that you have of your players at a certain time, you have to destroy the data, and you cannot sell the data or send it abroad without the permission of the data commissioner. There are certain gaps in law. The definitions are narrow. Some offenses like online grooming and image-based abuse lack explicit criminalization. Law requires display of obscene materials, but grooming may be through innocent messages. There's no protection for vulnerable adults exposed to grooming. So there's need for definitions aligned with modern online risks. Also on online sexual coercion and extortion, there's no specific law addressing online sexual extortion. And then there's lack of explicit protection for adolescent girls when it comes to child. So I will move to the next topic as I come to the end. What are the key recommendations? We need to enact responsive laws addressing the root causes of, that is gender inequality and online misogyny. We need to align our laws with international standards for protecting vulnerable groups. We need to strengthen law enforcement capacity and cooperation and mandate digital abuse prevention and response. We also need to provide adequate resources to national institutions and federations to handle that. Support survivors' access to justice through fully funded systems. Collaborate with the civil society and media for public awareness. Strengthen law enforcement capacity and cross-border cooperations. So for federations, we want to call upon them to adopt and enforce comprehensive internal codes of conduct for preventing digital abuse and cybercrime with sanctions for violators. We also call on the federations to establish transparent complaints mechanisms and actively monitor online environments during games. Provide training on digital safety, gendered impacts of online abuse, and cross-federation cooperation for online safety. And federations need to develop special units to handle digital-related harm. For stakeholders such as the advocate for legislation, for NOCK and other federations. There's need to link registration and funding to organizations that uphold the minimum standards for prevention of cybercrime. We need to lobby technological companies to improve content moderation and transparency. The media should apply gender-sensitive editorial standards and moderate comment and fact-check abusive content. And the government agencies should enforce cybercrime and data protection. So as I conclude, we need to remember that anyone can be affected by cyberbullying, but women and girls face a disproportionate burden in this harm due to existing gender inequality, social norms, and the ways digital platforms amplify power imbalances. So as online spaces continue to shape this violence has become a critical public safety, human rights, and policy priority. Thank you very much. I stop right there.
Thank you so much, Diana. Oh, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. And I think we need to be inviting you time and again to ensure that you keep on telling us and how we can protect ourselves now that technology is here with us. The digital platform is the new kid on the block, and we have to coexist. But if we coexist and we have so much negativity on it, so we have to look for ways of handling our sports as far as the digital platforms are concerned. I said we have legal minds with us here, and might be Kairan, Noor, Karibu.
So formally, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to be part of this important discussion. I would like to, of course, sincerely thank the National Olympic Committee of Kenya and especially Susan Adhiambo, who is also the safeguarding lead at NOCK Kenya, for the leadership shown in advancing safeguarding and athlete welfare within the Kenyan sporting ecosystem. So, of course, as you all know, and for those who have joined, I'm sure you're all either working in the safeguarding space or you're looking to learn more about it, or you already have some experience in it. So you already know that this webinar is very particularly timely. As sport increasingly operates across physical and digital spaces, safeguarding can no longer be treated as a compliance exercise or a standalone policy. So it must be understood as a legal duty, also as a governance responsibility and a core condition for athlete participation and performance. So today I will just focus on safeguarding through three interlinked lenses, and one would be the legal protection of athletes, and two, effective reporting mechanisms, and the third one would be disciplinary procedures and accountability. So why is safeguarding a legal issue and not just a welfare issue? And I'm sure you've already maybe been taken through this briefly, the presenters or the panelists before me. But safeguarding is often framed primarily as a welfare or an ethical concern. Well, that is true, but it is also and fundamentally a legal issue. So across jurisdictions, sport sits at the intersection of criminal law, child protection law, employment and labor law, human rights law, and lastly, data protection and cyber legislation. So abuse in sports, again, is not rendered acceptable or less serious because it occurs in a sporting context. For example, sexual harassment by a coach is still harassment, whether it occurs in an office, a school, or a stadium. Online threats at the same time or image-based abuse directed as an athlete constitutes cybercrime, as has been established, and not fun behavior, as many people might call it, and I put that in quotes. And failure by an organization to act on known risk may also amount, or rather does also amount, to institutional negligence. So under the IOC Safe Sport principles and modern governance standards, sports organizations carry a duty of care. And the duty requires not only responding to harm after it occurs, but also anticipating it and preventing foreseeable risk, including digital risk. So safeguarding, therefore, is not about risk management, accountability, and legal exposure, and not just values. More to say is a risk management, accountability, and legal exposure, and not just a value based on or an ethical or welfare concern. So understanding abuse through power and vulnerability. So again, to apply safeguarding law correctly, we must also understand that abuse through the lens of power dynamics. So in sports, we have power disparities, and it's also structural. So you see most of the time where coaches control selection, playing time, and progression. Federation at the same time control funding, accreditation, and careers. And then we also have institutions that control visas, accommodations, and scholarships. So because of this imbalance, and these are just to mention but a few, of course, there are many more examples I could give. But just for the sake of time, I'll mention those brief ones for now. But of course, because of this imbalance, we see that consent is not always determinative. So many legal systems and safeguarding frameworks recognize that apparent consent may be compromised where authority, dependency, or fear of repercussions exists. And this is particularly relevant as earlier again already mentioned, coach-athlete relationships. We also have athlete-administrator interactions and also online communication that move from professional to personal. So in practical terms, we're talking about, for example, persistent private messaging by a coach to a young athlete, even if initially welcomed, may constitute grooming. We also have digital silence following, say, for example, a rebuff advance may still be harassment. And of course, abuse does not also need to be repeated or violent to be serious. So any form, whether it could be a comment, a joke that is made in haste, is constituted an abuse. So safeguarding law rather recognizes psychological harm, coercion, and fear as real and actionable. So when you move to the legal protection across the physical and digital spaces, one of the most pressing challenges today is false separation. So, for example, you hear comment that such as this happened online, not at the training, or it happened outside competition hours. Also, it happen on a private phone. So legally, these distinctions are increasingly irrelevant. And again, also modern safeguarding approaches recognize that duty of care extends across training venues, competitions, team travel and accommodation, and even online and digital engagement linked to the sport. So if an interaction arises out of sporting relationship, safeguarding obligations are still triggered. And maybe as an example scenario, we can talk about maybe where an athlete receives sexually explicit messages from a team official via social media late at night. So we see that conduct, first of all, may breach criminal law. At the same time, is likely to violate federation codes of conduct, and also engages digital harassment laws, and at the same time triggers safeguarding duties for the organization. So organizations that respond by saying that this was private also expose themselves to legal and reputational risk. So moving or rather going on to reporting mechanisms, and this is where we see safeguarding either succeeds or fails. So most safeguarding failures do not occur because policies do not exist, but they occur because reporting systems do not work. So from a legal and procedural standpoint, for example, we're talking about reporting mechanisms, either must or meet four core standards. So for example, or rather the first one in this case needs to be accessibility. And this means that athletes must be able to report without navigating hierarchy of fear. And of course, this will require multiple reporting channels. We need to have anonymous options and even digital reporting tools. The second one here would be confidentiality. So again, information must be strictly controlled, and breaches of confidentiality not only re-traumatize survivors, they can violate data protection laws. And the third one is independence. So reporting must not be filtered through coaches, team managers, and performance staff, but safeguarding officers must be structurally independent to avoid conflicts of interest. And the fourth one is protection from retaliation. So, of course, fear of deselection, exclusion, or victimization in this I think for me, is a single greatest barrier to reporting. And I believe most of you would also agree on this. And legally sound system explicitly prohibits retaliation and enforce consequences for it. So importantly, reporting mechanisms can clearly state where matters are escalated externally, particularly for criminal conduct or cases involving minors. And speaking, or rather, on disciplinary mechanisms and due process. So this comes in after the, reporting, protection from retaliation. Disciplinary processes is where safeguarding credibility is either established or destroyed. And strong disciplinary systems must, again, as we've already said, have to be independent and impartial. There's also has to apply clear standards of proof, act in a timely manner, because again, justice delayed is justice denied, impose proportionate and enforceable sanctions. So a key misunderstanding in sport is the belief that organization must wait for criminal convictions to act, which is incorrect. And of course, disciplinary processes, again, may proceed independently and should apply different standards of proof. And thirdly, serve as a distinct protective function. So, for example, a coach may be suspended from contact with athletes pending investigation even before criminal proceedings are concluded. And again, failure to act in such circumstances exposes organization to further harm and liability. So when you look at building a culture of accountability and moving away from silence, safeguarding is cultural as much as it's legal. So a culture of safety is built when we see now reporting leads to action, outcomes are communicated appropriately, survivors are also supported and not sidelined, which is something we've seen a lot in most of our cases involving safeguarding and particularly abuse in sport and in general, and also where leadership models zero tolerance for abuse of power. So conversely, silence, slow responses, or even informal handling of cases sends a message that safeguarding is secondary to performance or reputation. And of course, now in this case, in the digital age, that message spreads quickly. So to athletes, families, sponsors, and the public. And in closing, into this brief presentation is that safe sport in the modern era requires more than policy. So it requires legal clarity, it requires institutional courage, and even consistent accountability. So safeguarding that stops at the edge of the field fails athletes, and of course, safeguarding that ignores digital spaces also fails in reality. So thank you once again for this opportunity to contribute, and of course to all the participants for your leadership and commitment to creating safe spaces for sport everywhere sport is lived. So this brings me to the close, but happy to get any comments, of course, questions at the very end. Should there be any queries or clarifications needed? But yeah, thank you so much, Alina, and over to you. And yeah,
Thank you so much,
I actually did not have
Kairan,
slides for this.
for that wonderful presentation and the insight that you've given us in terms of legalities and also policies. And might be we go straight to the panel, and I have just might be one question that cuts across both of you, and then we'll go to the Q and answer from the plenary. Might be I'll just say you've mentioned, and this question goes to both of you because you're all you're advocates of the High Court, and you've worked in different areas dealing with the same, might be not the same, but different, dealing human rights, and also the governance issue in organizations. You've mentioned several laws that are in place actually to handle safeguarding, to help us deal with safeguarding in sports. What makes you think that these laws are not enforced so that it can help this monster that is in the room, especially on the digital platform? Might we start with you, Kairan? You've just spoken last.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think it's a sharp question, and of course it goes to the heart of again why safeguarding in the digital space remains weak despite the existing laws. But I would say, and maybe just the short answer is, it's not that the laws don't exist, as we've already said, it's that the enforcement breaks down at multiple points. And maybe just to unpack that clearly and honestly, and of course, again, grounded in law practice and even real world sport context, of course, we see sometimes enforcement, for example, was designed for physical space and not digital harm. On the other hand, again, as said earlier, we also have issues to do with power imbalance and silence in sport. So that might also suppress reporting, and of course now leading to that law being applied to either circumvent now the perpetrators and putting them, or rather punishing them according to the law. And I think also I think it'd be safe to say also that digital platforms are not neutral and are poorly aligned with the law. So you find that maybe technology platforms, are private corporations, are not law enforcement bodies where they can for example, come in and curb that abuse or handle the issue. Of maybe they also operate under their own terms of service and not criminal law standards. Just to sort of mention but a few briefly. But then I think also there's issues to do with, example, how evidence can disappear, so you can delete content before it's preserved, or even the fact that the burden also falls on the victim. So you see that report abuse, or rather athletes are often expected to report abuse multiple times. They have to prove harm repeatedly and also navigate, for example, reporting systems that are not very clear. And I think also to say institutional safeguarding gaps inside sports. So of course, many sports organizations, for example, have generic safeguarding policies that do not have digital protocols. So again, we treat online abuse as a reputational issue and not a legal one. But I think those are probably some of the issues. And of course, I think also the lack of trained safeguarding officers with cyber expertise. I could be wrong, but I think those are what probably come top of my mind. And I think also cultural normalization of digital abuse. So you maybe, for example, you say this is the price of visibility, as is mentioned earlier. For example, I post pictures online and someone abuses me or makes a very crude comment towards me. It's like, oh, you posted yourself there, so you should have expected some of these things to happen. Or you should have expected the public to make certain comments based on either how you look, how you're dressed, and things like that, or even how you're conducting yourself in that digital space. So I think all in all, again, it's about the attitude on how we devalue harm, especially digital harm, and also how we discourage enforcement, and even how I think at the end of the day, it's also why this matters in terms of for sports governance, is that safeguarding frameworks may lose credibility, athletes may disengage or self-censor, organizations incur legal and reputational risk, and even the abuse might escalate. So it's not to say that the laws don't work, but I think it's the implementation that sometimes we find there's a gap in between, or there's challenges when it comes to implementation. And from the examples that I mentioned, I think this is where I would say is a barrier to cater for safeguarding or handle safeguarding, and not so to say that the laws don't work or they're non-existent, so to speak. So I don't know if I was able to handle that question well. I felt like I rambled on, but I think those would be my brief or short remarks on the same.
I'll add just a little. You've answered it adequately, but the key issue is fear of retaliation, because athletes fear consequence on their career, and as has been raised also, the sporting culture has normalized SGBV in sports. This comes up from the power dynamics between the coaches and athletes. Some coaches have authoritarian coaching styles. There's gender stereotypes in sports where they think the female athletes are at a lower class. Another thing is lack of awareness and education in SGBV. So people might not know what has happened to them is actually an offense, and they will not complain. And then also you'd find that the federation leadership have failed to ensure compliance with code of conduct, rules and policies against SGBV. So it creates a very hostile environment, which will discourage reporting for fear of the victims being re-victimized. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. And might be just to add on what you're saying about might be the federations not doing so much. I think also when it comes to protecting the sport, the sportsmen, or protecting the sport per se, I would say sometimes when you come up with, because it's like the coaches have been mentioned time in, time out in all the presentations, because these are people who work with the athletes on a daily basis. But I think when powers are given to them, I think that's when they can be able to do the abuses and then they run away with it. But I think some federations and also international IFs, they also have in their constitutions, they also have somewhere where you're dealing with putting the sport into disrepute. So being guided by that, and even in our own constitutions, I think if federations can be able to hang on that, they can be able to discipline, or rather report and handle the safeguarding issues that are coming up in the various federation, and especially involving the ladies and also even the men, because I remember there's a time just recently when our legend Kipchoge is running and he doesn't finish fast. He's like attacked online. He's being told amezeeka, sijui what and that. So those are the kind of abuses online that we are talking about. And also, as sportsmen and women, we should come together also and protect our very own. Because if we leave it at that, you leave it everybody to the world, and they can really abuse our legends. And these are the people, the best ambassadors that Kenya has ever had, the sportsmen and sportswomen of this country. So thank you very much. I think the people want. Yes.
May I add something?
Yes.
Yeah, and I would also like to recognize the fact that, of course, we all expect our athletes to perform at a certain standard, but when they don't, it doesn't make it right for us to lash out at them and start now calling them names and saying all these hurtful things, because you have to realize at the end of the day, in any position, in sport or not in sport, there's always going to be a winner and a loser. And not to say that they've not put the hard work in training and preparation of these games. It just so happens that it's a game of chance. So I've also often see this, and even colleagues who've attended, for example, matches. And there's one particular one that I would like to raise where we had, I think, the under-17 girls playing in Nyayo Stadium, where I think they lost, and I'm not remembering the game very well. But a friend of mine came to me and told me there was a man who commented and said, wanawake ni wanawake, and I know we all hopefully we're all Kenyans here, so we understand that context is that women are women, so we never really expect them to excel, so to speak. So they lost, so this is sort of like an expected outcome. And even one of them went ahead and said, nikikushika, like that implication. So you have to understand that these are minors you're making this reference to. You're an adult who came here to support a team. You're an adult here who came to actually, just watch them play and be the sports person that they are. But for you to make a comment like nikikushika, that implication, what does it really mean? Forgetting that they're underage or they're minors, but just the fact that you feel you can make that such a public statement, in a match or in a tournament, it's very scary, so to speak, because you can imagine this athletes who they walk and they live freely in our communities. If that someone lived the threat, how do we come in and mitigate such an issue? So it's just something that came to mind, and I felt maybe it was relevant to just mention. But I think it's something that it moves beyond not just the administrators or the people in the federation, but even the fan culture and how they respond and articulate, or even go beyond the freedom of expression and make certain comments or even threats to our athletes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyran. Okay, I think we are through with that question. Let's see the answers to poultry. Okay, so we thank you so much, but before we close, might well call upon Doreen just to give us action or next steps after this webinar. Doreen?
Thank you so much, Alina. And thank you so much, not only to the panelists, but each and every one of you who participated in today's conversation. Sorry, I've not moved my screen to where you can see me better. So please, my apologies for the lighting. But that notwithstanding, I don't think this conversation would happen if we are not all participating in it. Today, I have seen a very good number of gentlemen who've joined us in this conversation, and they've been quite engaged, which gives those of us in the gender space in sport a lot of encouragement, and we shall continue to undertake our tasks with a lot of enthusiasm. So thank you so much, Asanteni Sana, for your participation. In terms of moving forward, as you know, the NOC, we are very interested in ensuring that we are supporting federations in achieving their goals. Safe sport is one of the pillars of the IOC Gender Equality Framework. So please feel free to reach out to Susan or myself, or you can send an email to info@nock.or.ke requesting us to, in terms of the areas you need to support. You also have my personal number or Susan's, or even if you walk to the NOCK office, you can speak to us and we shall be able to help you put together frameworks and implementation, not only the policy, but also implementation and monitoring and evaluation to ensure that we protect our athletes as they represent Team Kenya at the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, and every other events that are out there. So thank you again and have yourselves a wonderful evening.